Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the start of the day 3 of the ICEM2025. My name is Greg Wilgura, and I am the European Regional Representative for IFEM. Today's session, Education Generative AI, takes us into the most important conversation in medical education today: how we thoughtfully integrate cutting-edge technologies into how we teach, learn, and practice emergency medicine. We are thrilled to have Dr. Simon Carley leading this discussion. Dr. Carley is a consultant in adult and pediatric emergency medicine at Manchester NHS Foundation Trust. He also is a consultant in enhanced pre-hospital care with Northwest Air Ambulance, the basic doctors with Northwest Pre-Hospital Critical Care Charity, and a Mary Doctor with Northwest Ambulance Service. He is a professor at the Manchester Academic Health Science Centre, University of Manchester, and visiting professor at Manchester Metropolitan University. He is a co-founder of the Best Bits website, St. Elmo's Social Media, a learning platform, and the MSMCS in Emergency Medicine at Manchester Metropolitan University. In this session, Dr. Carley will explore the promise and the pitfalls of using tools like generative AI to transform training, support clinical decision-making, and prepare future emergency physicians for the realities of modern medicine. But more importantly, he will remind us that while technology is powerful, it must never come at the cost of human connection, empathy, or sound clinical judgment. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Simon Carley.
Thanks for that, and I'm not going to say anything about what just happened, apart from the fact that I think it's really important that everybody has a voice heard from all perspectives, without any personal opinion on who's right or wrong. But let's hope that everybody can have their voice heard and feels okay when they leave the conference, because I think that's kind of important to all of us. Okay, change of pace. I'm going to talk about this, and I was really pleased with the title. Because I thought it was a cool title, Education Generation AI, because we're not talking about generative AI, which is the systems that underlie it, but we're going to be talking about the people who are going to be using it. And the reason why I'm doing that, so thank you for the introduction, that was very long, but it means I have a lot of jobs, I wear a lot of hats, which is why I'm here, because I never do the real job, I'm here. But the most important one for this is the role as Dean of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. So with colleagues, Alistair and Higgy and all the other people who are here from the college, we're responsible for training the next generation of doctors who are coming through. And AI is everywhere, isn't it? I mean, crikey, I went to Tim Hortons yesterday, because obviously you're in Canada, you've got to go get a coffee from Tim Hortons. And they had 2 offers on, so you could get the $3.59 coffee, or you could get the $10 coffee. The only difference is that the one came with artificial intelligence. And that seems to be the theme at the moment, that everything that you go to, or everything that you're offered, has got an AI thing. This is a program with AI involved. This is a conference with AI involved. This is all this. What does it mean, and what's actually going to be the implications for us as we go forward? So, give you a story, because I like stories. I was in the pediatric department fairly recently on a trauma team leader shift, and we got notification of a 6-year-old child who was coming in. They'd been hit by a van. They were pretty badly injured by the sound of things, so low GCS. I'd also had indications that they had their torso injuries, and it sounded as if they were bleeding and had some respiratory compromise as well. So this wasn't sounding good. And all of us here would be sort of planning what our next moves are. We'd be simulating in our head about what we're going to do when this patient arrives. But it's a 6-year-old. None of us deal with critically injured 6-year-olds on a daily basis, I hope. So I get out my trusty flashcards, because I've been carrying around for 20 years, and look at age 6 and see what's going on. Nothing wrong with that. Or I could go onto the computer and I can have a look at a little Excel spreadsheet that we have, and that helps us. But my resident doctor was there with literally talking into a phone and saying, basically, just giving the standby information and saying, what am I going to do in terms of RSIing this patient? And what she got back instantaneously was not just what I had in my pocket in flashcards, but she had an approach, an initial assessment aid memoir. She had the drugs done, which had been adjusted not just for the fact that this was a 6-year-old, but also for the complexity and adjusting for the fact that there was some degree of cardiovascular compromise here, plus a post-intubation plan, plus a post-investigation plan. Now, actually, if you sat me down, I could probably do that. I've been doing the gig for quite a long period of time. But the difference is 30 years of experience. And so what she had is not just information passively, but there was a degree of interpretation and additional information put forward. And that is the artificial intelligence element of this. And we'll talk about why that's different from just accessing information as we go on. Now, you'll be familiar with this graph. This is the sort of the pseudo-generations that go through. Some people really believe in this, some people don't. But the point I've got on this slide, and one of the key takeaways for the whole talk, is that people like me are in the Gen X generation. We grew up in a different way with different engagement with electronic media. But the people who are coming through now, the Gen Z, our medical students, and the Gen Y, our junior doctors, they're digital natives. They've been operating with electronics, and the idea that you can access the internet, you can access information and it comes back to you, basically before they were walking. So the idea, why would she be shocked, my resident, that she can get online and find this information? That's normal. It's me who's shocked. So there's a disconnect there between these generations, and that, as educators who are usually the senior people, the learners who are usually the junior people, there is an issue. Now, clinically, AI is definitely being used now. We could take a poll here. I guarantee that everybody here is using AI in their clinical practice, but you might not realize it. So to give you an example of the ones that we use, so Heidi is an ambient listening thing. I don't have any money in this. There are many other ambient listening devices around. But this is a patient I brought in as a trauma call, so I was the pre-hospital HEMS doctor. I bring the patient into the trauma team. There's 20 people in the room. There's lots of things going on. I hold my phone in my hand as I give the handover to the trauma team leader. 10 seconds later, I have this. And I didn't put it out in this order. I just gave a random stream of information. My handovers aren't that great. But what it's done is it's put all of that information together, it's summarized it, it's given the key takeaways, and then I can just airdrop that into the paramedic notes, airdrop out into the EPR, walk out the door with everybody's got great. This is fab. You know, this is the sort of thing that we think of AI actually making my life easier. There are some regulatory issues, which I'm going to gloss over. It's okay in the UK, but in different health economies it might be different, so be careful. But you know, that sort of thing is really useful. I can get that. There's a button at the top there that says detailed. I can make it super detailed, so it gives everything I said, or I can make it really brief. You know, this really easy tools. In my shop, we are now using AI interpretation of chest x-rays. So if I take a chest x-ray, it comes back immediately with an AI interpretation. It's really good, because it not only tells me what it thinks, but it tells me how certain it is about that finding. So it'll say there is a left lower lobe pneumonia. I'm 90% certain this is a left lower lobe pneumonia. There is possible enlargement of the aorta, but I'm only 60% certain of this. So giving me information which I can use. An AI interpretation of ECGs is coming. We've had ECG things at the top of our machines for a period of time, but now I've got other programs and processes which are going and giving more interpretation and giving the ideas about what you do next. So an integration not just of the interpretation of the results, but telling us what we do next. So clinically, it's here. And that's okay. I'm going to park that to one side because that's a different talk for a different day. Let's think more about the education side of things, because this is complex and difficult. And these are the main areas which I'm going to talk about. A little bit about the history of information, because that fundamentally is why AI is the most significant change that's going to happen to our working lives in our lifetimes, in my opinion. I'm going to talk about answers, which is really about questions. Alignment, which I think is fascinating and the biggest risk to us introducing AI into emergency medicine. And then a little bit about assessment, because you can't talk about AI and education without somebody going, my students just use it to cheat. Or do they? And we need to think about that. So let's think about information. Actually, before we go there was a great session last night. I don't know how many people here went to it, about the storytelling session at 5 o'clock. And myself and Mark were there, and we came out of that session, and we both looked at each other and said, what do you think of that session? We said, I really don't know. We need to go away and process it. Because what it was 5-minute segments of people talking through stories. And they were incredibly powerful, they were incredibly emotive. And that is the human being. For millennia, we were the storytelling animal, to quote somebody else. Stories are really powerful for us. We had the oral story. That's how history took place. That's how we developed ourselves. That's how information flowed. And that was like that for a very long period of time. It's why we still love stories. Then books came along, and that allowed us to transfer those stories both over geography, because the books can travel, and also time, because they sit for a period of time and you can read them later. You don't have to be in the room. That was a massive change in the history of the world. In my generation, we saw the internet. So, you know, when I was learning, if I needed to know something, I had to go to the library and read a book. Then the internet came, so all of the libraries were available in the planet, and I could access them. And now in the AI world, it's different because when I was training, essentially, I was a walking library. I had to remember the facts. 3 o'clock in the morning on the ward when somebody's got a pneumonia, and I need to know what to do with them. I haven't got time to go to the library to look it up, so I had to remember. Most of being a medical student was actually just remembering enormous numbers of facts. Internet comes along, you don't need to remember everything because it's all available, sort of. But you do need to be able to find it and judge whether it's any good. So we went from being the library to the librarian. That was our job. This is fun information scientists, if you like. But we could still know how things were made. We could still go and access the root cause and the root data to understand whether we were right or wrong and assess it. Now we're in the generation of AI. You ask a question of an AI engine, and if you're doing more than just searching for a guideline, so you can use it as a posh search engine, but if you're actually using it to make decisions, you're actually using it to formulate ideas, to come up with new information, which is where we are and where we're going, then you don't know how that's made. You can't go in and check the workings. And what it means now is that what we essentially need to be is much better at being able to ask the right questions. Because if we ask the right questions, if we ask the wrong questions, we get the wrong answer. And there's problems with that in our engines. They tend to work in a probabilistic way. So they'll give you the answer that they think you want to know. So I'll give you an example in a second, but if you go into an engine, it will try and find the answer that it thinks is most likely to be. So let's take a patient who comes in with chest pain. 55-year-old guy turns up with chest pain. It's probably ACS or nothing. Well, it probably is, but that's not how our minds work, is it? What you're thinking as experienced emergency physicians is, what isn't it? So why isn't this an aortic dissection? Why isn't this something which is more rare? Our minds don't work in the same way. What we're trying to achieve when we're making diagnostics are slightly different to what the model is trying to do, which is to make our life easier. We don't like easy lives. We would have chosen dermatology. So probabilistic. We also have concepts like temperature. So temperature is something you can turn up. I think this is fascinating. You can turn up or turn down in AI models. So you turn the temperature up, and it becomes more creative. It also becomes more likely to hallucinate and more slightly bizarre. But then it's more likely to spot the rare diagnoses. When you turn it down, it's less likely to come up with rubbish, but you may miss interesting things. So temperature is a component. We, as users, aren't available. We're not aware of how this is working. But we need people in our systems. We need to educate people who can work with the companies and work with the people who design it and work how these systems are going to work in our practice so we know. And the other thing is the engines at the moment, and everything I say at the moment is in the moment, because the world is changing so fast. If I gave this talk in 2 months' time, it would be a different talk. They don't appraise the data. So it will look at what data is out there, and you can restrict which data it looks at. So you can say, only go and look at PubMed, only go and look at open evidence. You can do that. But it's still not going to be appraising the quality of the data in the same way that we do. So there may be a huge body of evidence that says that drug A is fantastic. It's been going for 20 years. It's in all the guidelines. It's amazing. New trial comes out that says, actually, drug B is better, and we were wrong about it. Well, some AI engines are going to struggle to realize that the weight of the evidence has changed, and why, and whether it's been critically appraised. Now, this will come, but we're possibly not there yet. So what are we seeking now? We need people who can ask good questions. We know we need people who can go and understand whether an AI is giving us the right answer, what the quality of it is, and then interpret that into clinical practice. So let's think about questions. Because everything that you're going to do with an AI engine, pretty much, for you, is going to start with some sort of prompt or question that you put in. Before I tell you that, I'm going to tell you a little story about an author who was very popular in my youth, a guy called Douglas Adams, who's a sci-fi writer. This is from 35 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago. And he wrote a book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There was a film, there's a TV series. And in that, there was a race of super intelligent beings. They happened to be laboratory mice. And they designed a computer to answer the ultimate question. The computer was called Deep Thought. And the ultimate question, of course, is what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Does anybody know the answer? Yeah, the answer is 42. And the problem here was that essentially they asked the wrong question. So Deep Thought won. The whole experiment failed because they asked the wrong question, and then they designed the second supercomputer, which is the Earth. We are currently part of that experiment to find out what the right question to ask is for the next computer to eventually get the answer. But the point of the story is that it's basically garbage in and garbage out. So here's a 34-year-old woman, turns up in the emergency department. She's seen by 2 doctors, and they both decide they need a little bit of help from their local popular large language model, ChatGPT or something like that, and they use these 2 prompts. So have a look at those and see what you think. 2 different people have decided to ask the same question, different questions about the same patient. Now, both of these are reasonable questions. They're not bad questions. They're sort of things that people naturally ask. But if you do this, you're going to get very different outputs. And I've simplified this, but hopefully you'll get the principle of why it's so important. So if we take the second one, which is not the good question, because the answer is in the prompt, because it's asking for reassurance, and because we're operating a probabilistic model, hey, guess what? That's what you get. Whereas if you structure things better, and you don't say what I think the diagnosis is right at the beginning, and you ask for something which is going to be helpful, you get something better. This is not a dangerous or particularly complex issue. But it speaks to the fact of the difference between somebody who's digitally native, who's very happy to use search engines and ChatGPT and all the other things, versus somebody who is literate in using them. And this is a significant role for us as we go forward and educate. We need to be help people write the right questions. And if you go to places like Life in the Fast Lane, they've got ways of doing that. They can give you a structure about how to ask the right sort of question about diagnostics or therapeutics or management or prognosis. Just in the way that we did back in the day, learn how to ask the right questions of evidence-based medicine. We're at the same point. How do we develop the 3-part questions that we use in evidence-based medicine and develop those into tools which we can use with the models, the AI models, to give us the right, helpful sort of answers which are not going to bias us. And, good prompts, structured, comprehensive guideline lined, low risk error. If you're narrow biased, as we saw before, falsely reassuring, will cause problems. So questions are really important. That's something we can do. Alignment is different, and I actually think this is probably the most interesting and arguably, undoubtedly, the most dangerous aspect of AI as we see it on the horizon, and something we need to be cognizant about. So this is a job for you guys. I need you to speak to the person next to you just for 30 seconds, and it's a very broad, intentionally broad question. You're going to put some AI into your department. You're going to put an AI engine into your department. You can have it to do whatever you want it to do. What do you want it to do? What problems do you want an AI system to solve for your department? Give yourself 30 seconds and have a think. Okay. Have you got an answer? Have you got an answer? Okay, so in interest of time, we won't let you talk forever. Did you get an answer? Do you have an idea? No idea? No, geez, nobody's paying attention on stage. Okay, so I don't know what you said, but there's lots of things that you could have thought of, and we'll come back to that in a second, but I'm going to tell you a little story first. And the story goes back to the great days, probably about 10, 15 years ago, when places like Facebook and Twitter were really amazing places to be an emergency physician. During the FOMED movement, the free open access medical education, actually going on Twitter was a pleasure. You met people from all over the world, you learned things. It was a really positive experience. If I go onto my Twitter feed today, it's all about hate between PAs, it's about contracts, it's about working conditions. It's just miserable. Something changed, because it's not just about emergency medicine, that's about everything. And people cleverer than me track this back to about 10 years ago, when the big social media companies started getting into machine learning and AI about how they were going to develop the world. And they set their algorithms to do something. This is the alignment issue. They set their algorithms to improve engagement. And so the algorithm has no morals, has no ethics, and has no philosophy. It just wants to make people be there more often. And it very rapidly found, using A/B tests, which is essentially automated randomized controlled trials that they run in the background all the time, and the algorithms learned that hate, misogyny, war, pain, unpleasantness, conspiracy theories improve engagement. And so that's what it did. And that's one of the reasons why we think we're in the mess that we are now in so many respects. And just take us a moment to reflect that if those people had said, do you know what, algorithm? What we'd like you to do is to make the world a happier, friendly, more loving, sustainable space. It would have done that. But they chose a different path, and we are where we are now. So the alignment issue when you put an AI engine into something is really, really important because it will do what you want it to do. So here's some ideas which some of you may have thought. I hope, actually, what you said, I'm going to put it in. It's going to make me a better clinician. I'll make few mistakes. My patients will be better. We'll all have a great time. Awesome. That's great. But actually, if I go and ask your managers, and I ask the people who are the administrators of your hospital, or maybe some of your more senior people, they'll say the biggest problem we have in the A&E at the moment, or the emergency department, is crowding. Great. So let's get the AI engine in to come and sort crowding out. That'd be great. How would it do it? Well, it wouldn't necessarily do it by making you a better clinician. It might look at the elderly patient and say, well, actually, they're going to be 12 hours versus 12 and a half hours. Makes no difference. They can wait. But the low acuity stuff we can shift through. And actually, we've got the otter ankle rule, and that does, yes, it does actually show us that we need to x-ray this number. But actually, if we x-rayed fewer than that, and whether it'd be better, we'd move through quicker, and actually we'd save some money. So yeah, let's do that. So the algorithm wouldn't necessarily have the same values of you unless you program it in at the beginning. It might say that we need to make more diagnoses, because that's great, that sounds altruistic, doesn't sound fantastic. So your patient comes in with one problem, we diagnose 3, which of course means that we end up doing more investigations, we increase anxiety, people have more time off sick, the world gets less healthy rather than more healthy. We may align with the drug company, because it's a great new drug, it does actually work, it's fantastic, it's very expensive, but we wouldn't want our doctors to miss out on the opportunity to prescribe it, would we? So we can put some nudges in the system to move people in the right direction. Now, none of those 3 things that I've said are actually wrong or evil or immoral, but their consequences could be enormous. There's also the staple analogy. So there's an AI, there's a staple, there wasn't. The thought experiment is there's a company that makes staples, and they put a fantastically powerful AI engine into the company, and it optimizes staple production in the company. At that point, it realizes that if it wants to make more staples, it needs to take over other staple companies. So it goes into finance, makes money on the internet, makes money on the markets, because it's really clever, buys all the other staple companies. Once it's done that, it realizes it needs more factories, so it takes over construction. And eventually, all the people on the Earth are dead, and the entire planet is making staples, at which point it develops rockets and takes over the universe. So the point is, if we don't get alignment right, we don't ask of our AI engines the right thing, it's going to be a problem. What does that mean for education? It means that the next generation, we need to get people to understand that AI is not just a clinical tool, but it's a moral, a philosophical, and an ethical issue for us as we go forward in medicine. Students. All my students cheat using ChatGPT, or do they? Our students have to do assessments. So once a week they have to get in, they have to go see a patient, they have to write up the assessment. I'm pretty certain that this is fairly common across every education system around the world, both at postgraduate and undergraduate. This happens to be undergraduate, and this is a perfectly reasonable history. I have no problems with this. You're looking at it, and you scroll down, and of course it gets better, but unfortunately they forgot to take the bit off at the bottom. This happens surprisingly commonly. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the room who've seen this. So the question for you, and I know it was on ChatGPT because literally this was the prompt that we put in. It's so easy to do. So again, 30 seconds with the person next to you. What's the problem? Is that wrong? Is that a bad thing or not? So again, just have a chat with the person next to you. You've got 30 seconds. Have a think. See what we think. So I'll make the time back up. It'll be fine. So get us back on time. Okay, so there's an issue. It's been raised. Hands up if you think this is bad. Okay, hands up if you think this is fine. And hands up if you're not sure. Okay, so I'm with group 3. And for a number of reasons. The first is that, what am I trying to assess here? You know, we have a model of writing things down as proof of evidence, but actually that's pretty poor, to be honest. I don't know, when I just see this, whether they've done that in their bedroom because they can't be bothered to go to the hospital, and it is entirely made up, in which case there's been very little learning. There's been some, because they'll have read the thing, so they will have had some learning outcome from it. Or maybe they did go to the hospital, a very diligent student, they saw the patient, and then they came back. They used something like Heidi, which is what I use day-to-day, so that's a little bit of an irony there, isn't it? They put it into that, and then put it into the chat engine and just to tidy it up a bit, and it's come out. So evidence of what's written doesn't necessarily mean one way or the other that they have or haven't done it, and you could argue that the second student is really good because they've done both, learned both about seeing the patient and also about using tools to support their clinical decision-making and record keeping. Good on them. So I don't know which one's the best with those. But it does raise the question for us as educators, because all forms of education, that I'm aware of at least, in medicine, require some degree of assessment. So is the problem here that the students are cheating, and some of them are definitely not going to see the patients, I can assure you that? Or is it the problem that we have rubbish assessment systems? And actually it's our responsibility of educators to design things which are useful in the modern world. So if we go back to the original premise that people are using AI, there's more AI coming, it's going to be a significant component of our working lives, then we should be developing the assessment tools in order to do that, and or abandoning the ones that are too easy to subvert. So in one of the jobs that I have, I'm an external examiner for one of the big universities in the UK. They have a master's program, and the first job in that master's program, the first task was to write an essay about their local health economy and how it relates to an idealized system. It's a very good opening lecture. It's been running for opening task, running for years, because it tells us a lot about the students, it tells about where they're coming from, and it tells them, can they do a bit of synthesis evaluation on a level 7 course? It's really good. What we found is that the standard was getting better and better all of a sudden because it was being either created or supplemented by artificial intelligence. So the first response was, you can't use it, it's banned. Well, that didn't work, obviously, because with all of these things, you can sort of give me an essay on this, and then you can put it back into the engine and say, can you make it sound as if it wasn't written by you? And it'll put some, honestly, you can do this, it'll put some spelling mistakes in and some errors and change the language and all those kind of things. So you can't do it. You're one step behind the people who want to subvert the system. Or maybe they're just trying to do the best job they can. So we changed the assessment system, so now they do physical presentations which are pre-recorded and then sent in and watched, which is a better way, we think, of assessing whether they've done it and whether they have that. But the point there is, it's up to us to realize that there is a problem and to change the way that we do it. It's not up for us to just blame people and actually to say, you can't use AI in assessment or you can't use AI in your learning is stupid. It's a bit like it was 10 years ago when people said, don't use the internet in this project, go to the library. Really? I mean, we think that's ludicrous now. We're in the same situation. So is AI going to take over everything? Can you have artificial tutors? Can you have simulations online? Yeah, absolutely, you can do all of those kind of things. But at the end of the day, medicine is still a human touch job. So our role as educators is very much going to be to try and help people negotiate the things which are never going to be taken over by this, or not in my lifetime, I don't think. So actual care, ChatGPT is not going to put a chest drain in. It's not going to happen. ChatGPT is not going to be able to speak at the moment, speak with the compassion, the understanding, the empathy, to explain the decisions that have been made, to talk about probability, to talk about the data that's available, and make a proper assessment with our patient, come to a mutual shared agreement about what we do. And ChatGPT is going to give us, or many of the large language models, are going to potentially persist and amplify the inequality that we already know about in medicine. We know that the data out there is not supportive or representative of women, ethnic minorities, people who speak different languages. And it's going to be our role to make sure that we can navigate that and mitigate some of the problems which we already know exist, and also those which we find in the future as this develops. So our role is going to be really important, but our education about how we do that is also important. Which brings me to the last thing, really. So the wrong talk. I was really proud of my title at the beginning. I told you that. It's actually wrong. It's not educating Generation AI. This is educating Generation X. Because Generation AI, Generation Z, they're embedded. They understand this. It's you and me and most of the people in this room who actually need to take some effort to get up to speed. Went to a great talk yesterday on how to give a great presentation. And in that talk, I was advised that you should always use diversity in your pictures because there's too many images of middle-aged white men looking at computers. Well, I think this is one stage where actually this is entirely appropriate because it is the middle-aged white man looking at the computer who needs the education not the diverse group of students that we have in front of us. So think about who you are and who you need to go back. So future, is it the future? It's here. Is it great? Absolutely, it's amazing. Is it a problem? Huge. It could do great harm to us, but we can do better. So my last thought is I'm going to give you some doors. And everybody can go through a door. I'm going to go on the next slide. I'm going to give you a task. You have to choose one, and you have to tell the person next to you what you're going to do. You can do this next week. It's free. Nothing is going to cost you any money. There is an option for everybody. I can promise you there's something on here that every single person in this room can do. It is evidence-based that if you tell the person next to you that you're going to do it, you're more likely to do it. So I actually want you to do this. Okay? These are your 6 options. Just tell the person next to you.
Thank you, Dr. Carley, for this great and inspiring presentation.
Yes, not finished yet, but still going.
Yep.
I've only got 30 seconds. What are you going to do? Go on, since you're here now, you've solved the problem now because I've got someone to talk to. Which one are you going to choose?
The last one.
The last one is you're just going to answer 42 to everything. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed that. My aim of this talk was not to talk to you about the detail of AI because it's such a rapidly changing world. The purpose of this talk is for you to go away and take 2 steps backwards and think a little bit more philosophically about how we're going to help ourselves and the next generation deal with what is almost certainly the most powerful tool that we'll see in our generation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Carley, again. So if you have any questions, please go to the nearest microphone.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Great talk. As AI progresses, I'm just wondering about, it does squeeze out the human connection part. You said we have to be careful that that's not the expense. But I almost wonder whether we need a parallel human curriculum, how to be human alongside, AI, and a task force, as you say, to manage the ethical components.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, because that's something I forgot to say. So we had a conversation last night talking about residents in emergency medicine saying that they wanted to do a rotation through informatics or AI. And I'm not sure that we need to do that for everybody, but I think the idea that AI we should learn about it all the time. There is a task force coming with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, specifically to look at AI. That's to look at it in its isolation, but we're also trying to do it through all of our processes as well. So we embed that learning into everything that we do. I do think there is an absolute role, and one of the things I've thought about putting up on the final slide was go back to your department and devise a informatics/AI fellowship for people to do for 6 months to a year to learn more about this and help us as an organization and help us as a specialty become the subject matter experts who can then interact with the companies who are going to be doing this to us. And they will need us. And we need to develop that smaller cohort of really interested people. So yes, I absolutely agree with you that we need to develop those ideas and teach people better and also get our SMEs. Because we're not the SMEs at the moment. The people who are actually in my levels of the organization, we're not. There's a few, but not many. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
We're unfortunately out of time. So thank you so much, Dr. Carley, for this talk.